Pittsburgh Steelers fans, what's going on? This is Jeff Hartman, editor of BehindTheSteelCurtain.com, with you for another episode of the Steelers Preview Show. Joining me, as always, the triumphant trio. That's myself. That's Bryan Anthony Davis and Dave Schofield. Bryan, what's going on?
Hello, my friends, and welcome to a new decade. Will it be like Motley Crue, a decade of decadence?
I hate when people say that. Not the Motley Crue thing. Just it's the decade thing sounds like it just seems like way too much time has passed. I don't like it. Time needs to slow down. Dave, what's going on with you?
Yeah, that kind of got me depressed a little bit too. Whenever my kids who are younger, my two older kids that are 8 and 11 stayed up till midnight and they were talking about, oh, it's a new decade. In 10 years, I'm going to be this, that, the other. I'm like, in 10 years, I just hope to still be here.
Who knows what these podcasts will look like in 10 years, guys? I mean, it could be, who knows? The sky's the limit. But go ahead, Dave. You gonna say
I was just going to say, look at BTSC podcasts. When the last decade started, there was no such thing, was there?
Gosh, there was a viewer that went back and dug up the very first YouTube video that we did, and it was Lance Williams and myself. The standard is a standard, and we did this. I was in my mother-in-law's basement. We were in between houses, and I had hair a lot more than I do now. And it was right after the Bears game where the protests took place before the game. And look how far we've come. So we'll just say you never know. We never know what's going to happen. But let's start off with the Around the Horn segment, which is what we normally do if you're a first-time listener to this show, where we both take a minute to talk about anything that happened with the Pittsburgh Steelers in this past week. Bryan, you're looking sharp and spiffy in your vest. Why don't we start with you?
Well, you know, every girl's crazy about a sharp-dressed man, Jeff and Dave.
As Easy Talk once said, yes.
Yes, exactly. First of all, I can't wait for the new decade of podcasts 10 years from now. Lance will be with an animatronic figure, probably. That'd be great. I definitely want to see that. I think that'd be a whole lot of fun. What's really happened this week? I know we've had some stuff, Hall of Fame news, but with the Steelers, basically the bottom line to everything is the fact that Mason Rudolph is your number 2 quarterback next year, and Mike Tomlin said pretty much nothing else. He's proud of this team. We're proud of this team. That's great. But what most of Steeler Nation wants is to hear what coaches are going to be gone. And I have news for you. There's going to be no news as far as coaches being gone. Don't expect to hear much of anything. What you have is what you're going to see in August and September and beyond.
Dave, do you think there might be a coaching change? I mean, I thought Tomlin was open to that in his press conference.
Yeah, I think he's open to that because he just kind of didn't want to. I don't know. Is it that he didn't want to address it specifically? And by saying he's open to it, that kind of leaves some wiggle room in there. But I don't see anything major, honestly. I would like to see, if I see anything from it, I would like to see more additions than subtractions. I would really like them to expand their coaching staff by a couple positions.
Yeah, the Steelers have had some coaches come and go over the past 2 years. I mean, look at like last year, Joey Porter wasn't welcome back. They haven't been firing them. They always use the old, their contract expired, stuff like that. The Bruce Arians retirement fiasco, which we can all remember that. I think there's at least going to be one change. I'm not sure who that'll be, and I agree with Dave, it's not going to be major, but I think there's going to be at least one change in the coaching staff. I'm not sure who that is. If they haven't gotten rid of Danny Smith yet, they're not going to. And we've talked ad nauseum about Randy Fichtner. Keith Butler's contract is up. Maybe he decides he doesn't want to come back. Maybe he's done.
Are they going to redefine Coach Sherman as something else and have a new wide receivers coach? Right. He was not the wide receivers coach until he had to step up to it.
Exactly. So is he still have the interim tag? So there's going to be some change a little bit. Dave, why don't you go ahead with your Around the Horn segment?
Well, then I'll take what Bryan alluded to just because it's easy that we had another announcement of Hall of Fame, as I guess it would be semifinalists or I guess in order to, before they do the last cut down the day before the Super Bowl. And since they're doing the special 20 class in 2020, they will have their 5 players. And of those, I think, was it 15 that were selected? I'm pretty sure it'll be 5 out of the 15 with 2 Steelers. Well, no, they'll do 20 for the actual thing, but the regular player semifinalist was 15,
Exactly,
which included first-year eligible Troy Polamalu and 5th-year Alan Faneca, but did not include one Hines Ward, who was a semifinalist last year.
Was he? But this was the finalist.
Yeah,
he's never reached the finalist echelon. Hines has not. He's been a semifinalist. That's as far as he's gotten.
Yeah.
These are your finalists, basically.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't remember how they classified, if these are semifinalists, narrative finalists, or do they call the finalists the inductees, or do they go finalists to inductees, or it's always confusing with how they say the word.
You have finalists, and then you have your class of 2020, the people that are going to be inducted. So this is the spot where Alan Faneca has been here now for 5 straight years and has been denied every single time. I cannot fathom how they left him off last year. And it'll be interesting to see if he gets in this year, because I think this year's crop of players, everyone does the numbers. I know Bryan knows what I'm talking about, where they look at all the different players and who's worthy to be the first player, like first ballot get in guys, and who's not, and all this stuff. So,
you know what? He failed the swimsuit competition last year. I think that was the problem. But the biggest problem with Alan Faneca is the fact that he has to deal with Steve Hutchinson, which I actually think that Alan Faneca is a better player, a better option in the Hall of Fame balloting than Steve Hutchinson. The problem with that, though, is if one goes, the other's not going. So here's the thing. If Faneca does not go this year, you're hoping that Hutchinson goes just to get him off of there. So he's complete. You hope he goes in, so that paves the way for him. Faneca's a Hall of Fame player.
Absolutely. I don't think anyone that watched him play would say any other.
9 Pro Bowls, 6-time first team All Pro. I mean, that's he had a better resume than one of the players that made it in last year as an offensive lineman. I don't understand why he didn't make it last year. So
politics, man, politics. So
Steeler bias.
Yeah. Well, and right now the Steelers are pumping up Donnie Shell to be in that. What is it? What are they calling it?
The legacy class.
Yes. And they're putting in 10 of them. He's the best name out of all of those. If he doesn't get in with this class, there's a lot of people that think there's no chance he gets in. Oh, but this is his opportunity.
This is it, and which really bums me out, because LC Greenwood
is
a Hall of Fame player.
He's better than 15 of the guys that they had on the list, but they just weren't going to include 2 Steelers from that era, which is ridiculous.
Well, that's what I was going to bring up as part of my Around the Horn segment to piggyback off Dave, is that everyone's pumping up Donnie Shell, which rightfully so. He deserves to be in, but what about guys like LC Greenwood, who's also worthy? I mean, I just don't know how the Steelers can say we're going to pump up Donnie Shell, and thankfully he's still living. But LC Greenwood, who's since passed away, we're not going to talk about him. We're not going to have you Twitter clips of Mel Blount talking about where's the Twitter video of Mean Joe Green talking about LC Greenwood and playing alongside him on the Steel Curtain. And you guys just kind of touched on that, because he is Hall of Fame worthy. But here's my question, simple question, and I want you to be honest. This is difficult to take your black and gold glasses off when I ask this question. And I just want an honest to goodness answer. Is Hines Ward ever going to get into the Hall of Fame? Think about it. Okay, Bryan, we'll start with you.
If he does, it's a veterans committee. It will be 30 years down the road or 25 years down the road.
Okay. I'm not going to say what I think just yet. Dave, what about you?
If I take off my black and gold glasses, then the answer has to be no. If I leave them on, I'm going to say yes. But by taking them out, by taking them off, because he was loved by so many Steeler fans, but he was hated by by basically everybody else. So therefore, I think that's going to. I mean, he didn't have the fantastic numbers that some of these other people did.
That's the key, because hatred and stuff doesn't matter. Trell Owens got in. T.O. was hated by everyone unless he was on your specific team. And Hines Ward played the game the right way. Some people thought he was a little dirty, had a little chip on his shoulder all the time. And Steeler fans, trust me, I can only think of a handful of players in my lifetime that have had a rabid following like Hines Ward and, as they called it, Heinz Field, the Psycho Ward. You know, that people loved, and still do love Hines Ward. Hines Ward could be the mayor of Pittsburgh still, or at least come close to winning it. And it's just he doesn't have those eye-popping numbers to back up some of the other stuff that he does. Like, he has a rule named after him, you know, with the crackback block. He was a Super Bowl MVP. He won 2 Super Bowls. Those are all great. But if he were to have those eye-popping stats, I mean, you look at some of the receivers that aren't in that have better statistics, and some would say were better receivers than Hines Ward, it just makes it that much more daunting. I agree with Bryan. If he gets in, it's not going to be on the regular old ballot. It's going to be what is that called again, Bryan?
The Veterans Committee.
The Veterans Committee. Correct. There you go. So if you're in the live chat and I want to know what you think about that. I want to know if you think that Hines Ward, not should he be in. Any Steeler fan's going to say that he should. But if you're being honest with yourself, will he get in?
I want him in there.
Well, we all want him in there.
Yeah, I know. I'm saying, yeah, but you missed my big butt that was coming next. But I just don't think it's going to happen.
Because it's going to come down to year in and year out. Is there going to be one wide receiver that's eligible that's better than him? And has the better numbers. That's what it'll all come down to. Because
who was it this year? Who was it this year? Isaac Bruce, isn't he? Did he make the finalists?
Oh, I had the finalists here. Hold on.
Yeah, I'd like to see that list. One person, Jeff, that we didn't talk about in this whole thing are two Steeler coaches that could be among the 6, but it's a very big, it's a very prestigious list, and that would be Bill Cowher and Buddy Parker.
Yes, they're on the list for the 3 coaching spots.
Yes.
There are 3 wide receivers that are finalists, and they are 2 of them are kind of going to cancel each other out because of being teammates, but they are Reggie Wayne, Torrey Holt, and Isaac Bruce. So they had.
Wouldn't you say that those 3 players are all better receivers than Hines Ward?
Well, that's why they made it ahead of Ryan.
No, I know, but I don't think all 3 are going to get in.
No,
so I say Reggie Wayne. No,
they all had better numbers, but yeah,
and I don't really think he was as special as what Harrison was there. For the difference that Hines Ward made for the Steelers, that's another thing that should be looked at that won't be. Torrey Holt, you know, he was. You just mentioned he was next to Isaac Bruce. So, you know,
those Marshall Falk.
Yeah, I mean, so I don't think Torrey Holt's a Hall of Famer either.
I wouldn't be shocked if this year there are no wide receivers, if none of the 3 get in.
That's the worst case scenario for Hines.
Yeah, and that's going to be the problem is he needs these guys that are ahead of him to all get in first. Exactly what Bryan was talking about with Faneca.
Yeah, but the problem is they're going to the wide receivers going to keep lining up every year. There are new ones lining up every year that they don't happen as much with the offensive linemen.
Yeah, because was this Reggie Wayne's first year? I think he was eligible.
I think it is his first year of eligibility.
There's only 2 guys with in the final 15 that are eligible for the first time, and it's Troy and Reggie Wayne.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Real quick, no brainer. No, everyone thinks Troy gets in first ballot, correct?
Yeah,
he should.
I would probably be shocked.
If Ed Reed gets in first ballot and Hines Ward doesn't, you might have to come and get me. I might be going to the loony bin. I'm going to go off.
Yeah, it all comes down to who you're against, and that's the problem. And I mean, the other safeties that he's up against are John Lynch, Steve Atwater, and Leroy Butler.
The NFL wants Troy Polamalu in there. I
Yes.
talked about a Steeler bias, but every year, and you might be laughing at me when I mention the WWE Hall of Fame, but every year you look for any Hall of Fame looks for a headliner.
No, you're right.
The NFL does it too. And so there's always that headliner to close the show that's the face of the list. And I have a feeling they want Troy Polamalu to be the face of the list, just like next year the face of the list will be Peyton Manning.
Now, let me say this, that I would be really, really excited and also interested. We'll use the word interested to hear Troy's speech. I just want to hear what he has to say about the Steelers. We've all heard about how the two parties just at the end, it just got a little bitter. Troy wanted to keep playing. The Steelers were like, I think we're done. We're done here. He hasn't really been back since then. We haven't heard much about him. I'm really be curious to hear what he has to say. But let's say Faneca and Troy get in. Are the Steelers in the Hall of Fame game?
Yes.
Yeah, because you're gonna have Donnie Shell as well.
So you get 3. That place is gonna be a terrible towel maniac's haven, as Myron Cope used to say. So yeah, I think they would have 5 preseason games.
Yeah, I am almost certain that they will get in. The last time they got in, it was 14, I believe it was 14. And the guy that got in at the time was Jerome Bettis.
Well, yeah, because
so they piggybacked on top of that.
Who did
they played, and wasn't that what the infamous?
What was when
Sean Swisham
hurt his knee?
Yeah.
Against
terrible
Minnesota?
field.
It was against the Vikings.
Minnesota. It's against Minnesota.
Now, who is the previous Hall of Fame game against? Before that?
Oh, I could tell you that because my son was just born, and I was in the hospital trying to watch the Saints and the Saints and the Steelers.
Very good.
Correct. Yeah, that was the day after my son was born.
Yeah, I have family that lives in Canton, Ohio, and they always buy me Steeler like commemorative cups when they are in the Hall of Fame game. And
that
so
stuff is cool. I went one year, and I went the John Stallworth year, and that was also Jim Kelly was the headliner. But John Stallworth, it was awesome. And this was 2002. I was wearing eye black and just a Steeler helmet. And it was the hottest day. And I just had like a regular Steeler t-shirt. And I remember he was saying, and I'd like to thank the fans of Western Pennsylvania. And I just remember standing up and clapping. And then everybody back home saw me because this Plains Day, there's me for 5 seconds clapping for John Stallworth. That was just it was beautiful to watch the entire extravaganza that is the Hall of Fame induction. If you ever get a chance to go. It is really cool.
But that was back when they used to have it on the front steps. Was it not? Or I'm sorry.
No.
That was back on back. Okay,
This was in the stadium.
You said Stallworth.
Yes, John Stallworth in 2002.
Excuse me. Okay, Dave, you have a stat geek for us. Sorry for all the Hall of Fame talk, folks. I like talking about the Hall of Fame. But go ahead.
Here's just a couple things. I wanted to talk about highs and lows of 2019. So I'm going to specifically look at one high stat and one low stat. Do you guys want to start with the positive or the negative? Do you want to look at what was so great or what was so not great?
I think we need positive.
You want to start with the positive?
Right.
Okay. So what would you say was the most, I would say, what do you think stood out as the best statistic for the Steelers for the 2019 season?
Are we talking team or individual?
Anything on defense?
Yeah. Anything specific on defense? How about the takeaways?
I was going to say turnovers. Yeah.
Yes, their takeaways, and they had 38 takeaways this year. That is the most that they have had since 1996 when they had 40. But
is that a franchise record? 40?
No, they've had in the 50s a bunch before. Remember,
Are
the
you
takeaways used.
serious?
Oh yeah, the takeaways used to be much bigger numbers than what they are today.
Okay.
But the thing that is interesting is they did something. Well, these stats go back to 1940. That's as far back as I could go using Pro Football Reference. I didn't try to find the other 7 years just to make sure.
And nothing happened in those 7 years.
Exactly.
The
I don't think they
Pirates
recorded them.
when they were the Pirates. Yeah.
Yeah. So this was the first time in franchise history that the Steelers doubled their takeaways from one year to the next. And they more than doubled it. They had an increase of 23 because they only had 15 last year, which was a franchise tied for the franchise low for them to bounce back and more than double it in 2019. Now, so they were plus 23. The next closest in the history of the franchise of where the number of takeaways they had from one season to the next was kind of cheating, and it was 20, and that was from 82 to 83 because of. Any idea why they had such an increase in turnovers going from 1982 to 1983?
Yes, because they only played 9 games in 1982 because of this strike.
Because they only played 9 games in 1982 because of the strike.
Gosh. And I tell you what, that was dreadful every week. I'm 11 years old. Every week I'm like, will you just please come back and play?
Yeah, and I mean they still had, because they went from 25 to 45. So this was the biggest jump in franchise history that they've ever had in takeaways. So that's a high. That's a positive. Now let's look at the low. What do you think was a pretty low team statistic for this year that could have maybe been somewhat, well, it's not completely legendary. Yeah,
rushing yards.
Rushing yards is a good one.
How about just going to say just the offense in general?
How about points scored?
Oh yeah, this was the worst since you probably know the number. What was it, like 83?
It actually was the worst since 98.
98. Yeah, the Cordell year.
And now remember, how much has the NFL changed to where we just score more points now? So for them to be this low compared to these other years, it's pretty bad. They had 289 points this year, and they had 263 and 98. The thing is the drop off in points. This is the most drop off in points. Well, it's actually technically the second most drop off in points from one season to the next. They went from, I didn't write down that number, but they lost 100. They were down 139 points. They were 400 and something last year, down to 289. There's only been 2 other times in the history of the franchise where they had a decrease of 100 points scored or more. One was from 97 to 98, that bad 98 year. They had dropped 109 points. And the other one is, I don't think even counts, although it's the most, is the 152 points, which once again brings in the 1982 season, where from 81 to 82, they went from 356 to 204. But the reason that doesn't count is because even with 204 points scored, because it was the strike year, they actually averaged 0.4 more points a game than they did the year before, even though it was that big drop in number. So that doesn't really count because their points per game wasn't much. So this was the biggest drop in basically in the history of the Steelers from offensive points scored from one year to the next, but it was the biggest jump they had in takeaways from one year to the next.
I think the saddest part of all those offensive stats is the fact that 1982, their leading rusher beat the leading rusher this year. This is the first time since 1967 that the Steelers had a leading rusher under 500 yards.
I was getting ready to look up that one, but I didn't want to have too many different things all at once. So I think I'll have to throw that in an article.
Deontay Johnson's 5 touchdowns led the entire team this year. I think it's 5. It was awful. It was awful as awful can get. But is that it, Dave? Good Stat Geek?
Yep. That's Stat Geek.
Hey, Dave, can you look one up for me when you get a chance? Not now?
Sure.
I thought something was amazing. You talked about the turnovers on defense. This is the first time in any memory that I could remember having 2 Steelers have 5 interceptions or more.
Ooh.
And this is, I'm wondering when the last time that happened.
So who were I know Hayden had 5.
And Minka.
Did Minka, did he have 5?
Minka had 5 right away.
Gotcha.
I mean, like by week 9 or 10.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, I'll have to look that up. I mean, because we also know we can look at those sack numbers of 2, where we know where that goes back to with 2 guys in double digits there as well. So we've got some good stuff to talk about the past season as time goes on.
Yeah, speaking of that past season, 2019 was memorable. We'll put it that way. Before we get into our next topic of conversation, I want to remind all the fans out there that you can help the show out in a myriad of ways. If you'd like to donate some money to the program, you can by using the super chat feature down in the comment box. To the right is a small little $sign. You can hit that little button, donate any amount of money you want to the program. It's all appreciative, and that's how we've gotten these brand spanking new microphones. All of us got them. You can't see Bryan's, but you see Dave's hovering there. And Lance has his as well. Oh, there it is. Very nice. So we appreciate all the support from people that have monetarily helped the program and donated money via the super chat. Also, if you don't want to donate money, we get it. A lot of people, times are tough right now after the holidays. And so you can just like the video. If you just like the video, subscribe to the channel, and make sure that you set up your notifications so that you do not miss any shows, that would be the best. Ali suggested the super chat needs to go to BAD's curtain fund. I know Bryan's wife is getting pretty ticked off at you all for making fun of her curtains.
And you know what? She's really nice. Jeff, you've met her. She's nicer than I am.
Yes, I've met her several times. Yeah,
but
she's
boy,
very nice.
That's her.
Other than that, if you're listening to the show via audio platforms, whatever platform you're using, whether it's iTunes, Google Play, give us a good review. And that really helps us out, because when people are thinking about, I want to hear a Steeler podcast, and they type in Steelers, we want us to be one of the first things that show up. And that's why all those likes and comments and ratings and reviews, they all help. Trust us. They all help. All right. So let's get into 2019. That's going to be the topic of conversation for this episode. I want to start off with a question that Bryan had as the headline or the title of his show on Monday, The Steelers Hangover with Tony, which was a great show. Go back and check it out if you haven't yet. And that is, now that it's done, now that it's over, 2019 is not only the year is in the books, but the season for the Steelers is also in the books. When you look back on it, how will you view the season? Okay, because it was so unique in so many different ways. I'm going to have Dave go first, and then I'll let Bryan go. So Dave, how are you going to view this past season?
I would say I'm going to view it as a shifting of the guard, or a changing of the guard, that it went from where this team went back from being defined by its offense and just hoped that the defense didn't kill them, to where it was defined by the defense and was just hoping that the offense didn't kill them. So
okay.
that's it. It was the shift.
But do you view it positively, negatively?
That's what happens when you shift. You view the defense positively and the offense negatively. But I'm hoping that the offense could bounce back a little bit. I know some people still don't believe it, but I have hope that Benjamin Todd Roethlisberger will be back under center in 2020.
What about you there, Bryan? How do you view it?
I'm going to use one word. I'm going to try this out. Pride. This is a proud team. This is a team that got beaten down early. And I talk about this all the time. Only reason the Dolphins made the trade with them because they thought they were going to fold like a cheap suit. They did not. This was a team proud enough in what they can do, not only the team, but the coaching staff, to go ahead and fight every single week to get where they were. At the end, the pride never ran out. Their ability, what they can do just ran out at the end. Those last 3 games, scoring only 10 points each week, that wasn't because it was a bad football team. It was a wounded football team that their pride couldn't carry them much longer. But when we talk about pride, I'm proud. I'm proud of this team. it just ended with a whimper because we got to the point where we were so excited because they're 8-5 and they're going to make the playoffs. Everybody's assuming they're going to make the playoffs. There's 3 games left and they're going to do it. But we realized that just the Duck Hodges story just ran out of gas. And when you are playing with your 4th and 5th options at quarterback, 2 guys that were on their couches in September, that's a problem. And no matter how you push these guys and what they do, bottom line is coaches look at tape and they figured out Duck Hodges right away. This isn't Duck Hodges' fault. I mean, he was playing with house money, like you say all the time, Jeff, but they went for it. That was a really exciting year to watch them week after week win with mirrors and do what they did. So that's why I'm so proud of this team.
I'm going to go and say that this was an extremely fun and frustrating season at the same time. There were moments where it was a blast watching these guys, whether it was Mason Rudolph early on, who was finding ways to win, even if it was just checking the ball down repeatedly, whether it was Devlin Hodges coming in for the first time in spot duty in week 12, or when he won out in LA against the Chargers on Sunday Night Football. This season, if anything, you tuned in because you just didn't know what you were going to see. And sometimes that was awesome. And sometimes it was, I'm going to bang my head against the wall because this offense is just that bad. And then let's also not forget something that Dave mentioned, and that's the defense. Who was going to make the play? For once, you knew someone was going to make the play, but who was going to make the play? TJ Watt, Bud Dupree, Minkah Fitzpatrick, who comes over. This season was a lot of fun for me. Like I really did enjoy this season. And we said it a bunch of times throughout the season, especially on their win streaks that they went on a couple different occasions. And when they got themselves in 8-5 and everyone's thinking they're going to make the playoffs, is they're playing with house money. That's what we always kept saying. Man, they're playing with house money. It almost seemed as if the house money ran out and they started using their own money. And anyone that's been around gamblers, sometimes it's really tough to just step away from the table. And so they were on a hot streak. And if they're playing blackjack, they're just, I've got you, bang, bang, bang. And then all of a sudden, things went cold real quick. And the house started to collect because the house always collects as it seems. And so it just seems like it's one of those situations where it just seemed like it just ran out. They ran out of gas. They ran out of money, however you want to say it. But it was a lot of fun. I really thought that this season was fun. And I said the same about the Tommy Gunn era, back when Tommy Maddox was the quarterback. That season was a lot of fun. I mean, when they made the playoffs, that was 2002, right, Bryan?
Yes.
Yeah. So it wasn't always the best football to watch, but that didn't mean it wasn't fun. And so when I look back in 2019, I'll remember it for that's the year without Ben Roethlisberger because of his injury. And then I'll remember it as just a ton of fun. I enjoyed it. Dave, did you have something to say? Dave?
Okay, I tried to hit my unmute and it didn't work, so I got it that time. It's funny because, Jeff, so the season wasn't boring for you? Because I seem to recall last year in the Super Bowl when there wasn't very many points scored and everything, you said about how boring it was when it was all defense. Well, the Steelers this year were so much all defense. It didn't get too boring.
Well, they also took the ball away so much.
Yeah.
That's fun.
Yeah,
it wasn't just, it wasn't
just stop them, punt, stop, punt.
Exactly.
Stop, punt.
It wasn't just like banging your head against wall. There were takeaways. I mean, 38 takeaways. We just talked about that. And you add in Minkah Fitzpatrick, and he brings in a whole new dynamic playmaking ability that the team didn't have in the back end. Joe Hayden's taking the ball away. TJ Watt's a man-child in its own self. I understand what you're saying, and I'm guilty. I did not think last year's Super Bowl was exciting because it was just, I don't know, just seemed like two defenses bludgeoning themselves to death. But at the same time, I thought this Steelers defense, because they took the ball away so much, was fun to watch. Bryan, what do you think?
Well, let me ask you a question, Jeff. You, in all 16 games, you picked the Steelers all 16 games, so it's really easy to say to calculate your record at 8-8. But deep down, I mean, would you agree that that's a heart pick? Or was your head thinking that they were going to win every single game? Yeah. I mean, I'm not challenging you. I'm just asking.
Oh, you can challenge. I mean, for instance, in week one, that's a hard pick.
Yeah.
You're going to New England in week one. I mean, that's I know Ben
Roethlisberger. Week one, you don't know who anybody is. That's exactly why you do it then. If that was week two, you probably don't make that pick.
But, I think about some of the games. I guess in my mind, I have yet to have a team that I've covered so closely. And that's the damning part of this, is that we all cover these teams so closely that we know who's playing well, who's not. We're not just that everyday Joe Schmo fan that, who do the Steelers play this week? And they say that on Saturday. That's not us. I mean, and the people that are in the live chat right now and listening in audio that's not them. If you're listening to this podcast in the off season, you're not that fan either. You're someone that follows this team closely all year round. And so you have more of an educated thought process when it comes to picking. And for me, because I'm an optimist, I'll always be an optimist. If I'm not optimistic, you should be concerned. I always in my mind, think of a way where this team, like in this specific situation of 2019, I guess I always thought until the last 3 games, I knew it wasn't going to happen. This offense can turn it around and at least put up 20. You know what I mean? That's where my mind would go. And I knew the defense was good enough to keep everyone off 20. And so I'm thinking this offense they're due for a breakout until the last 3 games. And then my head took over my heart and said, this offense sucks.
Yeah, but
and I was right.
Week in and week out, Jeff, you just kept saying, I mean, let's not say week in, week out. Let's look at the last week of the season where both Bryan and I did not pick the Steelers to win because we're like, we just don't trust this offense to score. Too many good things have to happen. Things have to be lined up right for this team to score. You were the optimist that said, I think they can line up right and they can do it.
Well, what was the score, though? I predicted 13-10 with a defensive touchdown.
Exactly. And because you're like, if things line up right, they can pull this off. And that's why we love you for that. We think it's great. You are the one that if there's a way that they could pull it off, you're going to figure out the way. You knew it would take a defensive touchdown to win that game. So therefore you went with it. You rolled with it. And kudos to you for sticking by it all season.
I am the violinist on the deck of the Titanic until that sucker goes down. That is me 100%, just playing along. No, nothing to see here, folks. Just keep on keeping on, so.
And I'm usually that guy, but I feel like I was broken this year. I feel like I got broken this year. I'm not going away.
In what way? Do you think this has hurt you forever, or is this just a yearly?
No, I think this year's an aberration, and an injury turns things into an aberration. But
I'm talking about your gut feeling about the team. You said you're normally optimistic. But you got broken.
I felt broken because I just did not feel, with the injuries and with everything that was happening with James Conner and Juju Smith-Schuster, that it just was never going to be good enough this year. And I felt like they were winning, like I said, winning with mirrors all year long. It just seemed like, look back. You mentioned earlier we're going to talk about the best game of the year. The thing for me is I can't think of a dominant win. There wasn't one. There wasn't one that we were waiting. We were just hoping one win where they just run away with it. And so I feel like I just, my optimism, like people that know me call me Jolly Bryan. And, well, you might not call me that, Jeff, but I mean, I'm the happy, my best friend used to call me happy-go-lucky without the lucky, which I'm actually a lot more lucky than anybody knows. But my thing is like this year, it's just like, I just didn't see it happening. I was waiting for the other shoe to drop all year, and that's not me. So something broke me this year. I'm coming back. Trust me. Jolly Bryan's coming back.
I think it was a combination of you didn't you didn't know what you had in your quarterbacks, and you definitely didn't know what you had in the person coaching your quarterbacks, and you didn't trust, and the two things working together, you couldn't trust that they would both get it straight, because it took both of them getting it straight in order for them to turn it around. And I still don't know which one it was. Was it the quarterbacks were that bad? Was it the offensive coordinator was that bad? Was it a little bit of both? Yeah.
All right. Well, let's go through this exercise. It's going to be the final thing we do on the show. We have six different categories, and they're all dating back to the 2019 season in some way, shape, or form. And I want you all to answer the questions to the best of your ability. And if you're in the live chat right now and you want to chime in and let us know what you think as well, please do. We're going to start off with a question that Bryan already alluded to, and that is, what was the best game of 2019? Now, you can view this in a bunch of different ways. You can say, what was the best game in terms of, was it a tight game? Maybe the Steelers didn't even win the game. In 2019, what was the best game? We'll start with you, Dave, because Bryan's looks still a little stumped up there.
Yeah, I'm trying to look up some. I wanted some stats to go along with it. Now that I thought of it, to me, the best game was Week 4 against the Cincinnati Bengals, when, unfortunately, on the second play on offense, Deontay Johnson fumbles. They get the ball down there close. The Steelers keep him out of the touchdown zone. They kick a field goal. They go down 3-0, and they don't give up another point the rest of the game. That was the best game for me.
Okay. What about you, Bryan? Have you thought of one yet?
Yeah, I was thinking about the Colts game. Just how that game made me smile.
Pick six.
Yeah, and also I picked the correct score of that game, and I just realized that after I picked the Colts game. But that was just a game that, with that pick six and with everything that was happening in that game, that's when you started to feel, hey, maybe they might be able to put something together. And that was a good feeling game for me.
I'm going to go with what I thought was probably, there were two crescendos of the season for me, and the first one was the larger of the two, and that was the win over the Rams at Heinz Field. You have a team that was in the Super Bowl last year, comes to Heinz Field. Pittsburgh had won, I want to say, 3 or 4 in a row, and remember how the game started. Snap over Mason Rudolph's head, scoop and score. You're down 7-0 before you can even blink.
I know.
You're thinking,
I was there.
What is going on? And they came back. And won it. I think the other crescendo was when they beat Cleveland in Pittsburgh 2 weeks after the Week 11 fiasco. So those two games stick out for me in a positive way. Let's go to the other side of the ledger now. Worst game in 2019. Sadly, there might be more games to choose from. We'll go in the same order. Dave, what about you? What do you think?
Okay, although I feel it was the bookend of the season, I've got to go with what's fresh. It was that horrendous offensive performance in Week 17. That when you knew the other team was going to run the ball and you gave up 200 yards rushing, and you just couldn't produce any offense that entire game. You had one 75-yard drive that went, the only real drive of the whole game that was a legit scoring drive for either team that wasn't set up with something else that ended in a touchdown. But then that was it. They didn't have another drive over 28 yards the whole game. So I have to go with that last Ravens game.
What about you, Bryan?
I was going to originally go with the New England game, but Dave, you're absolutely correct. And the reason I want to go with that Baltimore game as well is, even though I did not expect them to win that game, it was just the fact how they were embarrassed and how that other team, those purple buttholes, just and I will call them, I don't care. I mean, blast me on YouTube and I'll look at it tomorrow and I hate John Harbaugh. I mean, I don't think anybody knows that. And Nap 1963 put that as the favorite nickname of the year, Wang Harbaugh. But here's the thing. They went out of their way to embarrass a team that was broken. That team was broken, and they went out of their way to embarrass it. And Carly just put something about 2020 being a revenge tour for the Steelers, it will start with Baltimore. And that's, if you're looking for vengeance and you're the Steelers, that's the team you go after, you target, you have the bitterest of bitter tastes in your mouth after that game. I mean, after the Patriots game, which I hated, I kind of expected it because it was just, it was the Patriots and they were going up there. They're the defending champs. There's that magic and having that primetime game in week 1. So I kind of figured that was going to happen. But this game with and my preface it, I live in Maryland. You guys live in Maryland. How much have you heard this week? After the game, I'm going to tell you guys this. After the game, my wife said, could you go pick up our daughter at a friend's house? I'm like, no, I won't go there. They're Ravens fans, and they'll make me want to punch them. They're the nicest people, but I will probably strike an 11-year-old, and that would be really bad because I love children. But I knew this kid was going to badger me, which I would have never done. But here's the thing. I just feel that game, if you can't get inspired by how bad that game hurt next year, then you don't have a beating heart in your body.
It's tough to go against that one. I will, though. I'm going to find, and I think it was a much more significant spot in the season, and that was week 15. Buffalo Bills. You guys were there. They flex it to prime time.
The spoon game.
I'll be honest with you. I'm surprised nobody went with the Thursday night Cleveland game. That was pretty bad too.
It was a debacle. And that was bad. To me, they were very parallel games, minus the Myles Garrett fiasco at the end. But the Buffalo game, if Pittsburgh wins that game, we're previewing a playoff game.
Yeah.
Instead of talking about
the question was, were you the 5 seed? That's what that was supposed to be, the game to who was the 5 and who was the 6. And instead it was who was left out. But I know a lot of people are saying about the Patriots game. To me, that feels like a different Steelers team for some reason. I mean, there's so much with no Ben and with Minka. That seems so far away. Yeah, granted, it was bad. You just went there and completely laid an egg after all the prep leading up to it. But it just doesn't seem like the same team to me as the rest of the season.
All right, so there you have it. Let's go to the best moment of the season. And that could be any moment. You have to think about a situation or something that took place during the season that you thought was the best moment. Bryan, do you have one off the top of your head?
Off of the top of my head, I'm probably going to go with Minka Fitzpatrick against the Colts. That was just a moment that I thought was just special, that pick 6.
Dave, what about you?
I was thinking from that game you could go in the opposite direction and say the Vinatieri's missed field goal at the end of that game was quite a moment. But I'm going to go with the Deontay Johnson touchdown on the all-out fire blitz, send everybody at the very end of the first half against the Dolphins that got them right back in the game. I mean, they had a chance of losing to a team that hadn't won a game yet, and they were down 14-0, and that kind of brought it back a little bit. So I thought that was just a kind of a turning point of that game, especially since I was there. That was pretty electric being there for that one.
And especially because you hate Deontay Johnson.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Deontay after the game said, I was motivated by Dave Schofield's hatred for me. I need to win him. If I could win him, I could win anybody.
I was gonna say I was gonna say something about Deontay Johnson's punt return in Arizona, but I'm gonna take Darren's, and I think this is tremendous. Best moment.
I saw that.
Hey, third round pick out of it. Good for
we
them.
did.
Yeah.
That's a touch moment right there. Good job, guys. Good job. X Eddie B puts $2 in the tip jar and says, love the show, guys. There you go. Thanks, Eddie. We appreciate you as always. All right, guys, worst moment. I'll go first. I'll let you all go first. And that was the fiasco in Cleveland. By far, that was the worst moment, in my opinion, with Myles Garrett and all the stuff that took place after that and the accusations, and it was ugly, period. So that was my worst. What about you, Bryan?
I got to go with Juju Smith-Schuster fumbling the ball against Baltimore in Week 5.
Oh, that's
was
a good one too.
That was the turnover that I'm not going to say killed the season, but it jump-started the Ravens season. If you beat, I could honestly say you beat the Ravens there, the Ravens don't go on that run. I actually don't think they do.
You're probably right. Yeah, you're probably right. What about you, Dave?
Well, I can't disagree with either one of your guys. Those are, I think, they're obvious. So I'm actually gonna give you two, which I think are a little bit close. One because I was there, and one just because of what it was. The James Conner fumble right after you got the turnover against San Francisco, where you were just trying to hold on and win that game, and then he fumbles it right back to him for them to go on to win. That was pretty bad. And then the other one where Bryan and I were sitting there together right after Renegade, and they hit the super long pass to just go right down the field. Just that pass alone, and then just that entire drive that they just went down and shoved it. I mean, took the lead right there. That was just, yeah.
Jeff, would you agree that Dave Schofield is probably one of the nicest of all men you have ever met? Because I would probably say he's probably one of the nicest
he'd
people
be up there, yeah.
And
he'd be up towards the top.
Sitting next to him, I actually thought, Dave, you were going to say the Wildcat fumble because I have never seen him angrier.
Bryan, I blocked that out of my head. That's what I should have said. I blocked that. I couldn't get over it. I did not get over that the whole time. Bryan's dropping me off at my front door at 5 a.m. and I still was not over that decision, was I?
Oh, it was brutal. I mean, that man was so mad.
Yep.
Again, right after a turnover. That was right after Steven Nelson's turnover.
Yeah, when he returned the interception.
And give it right back. That was a trend.
There was one play that was a penalty that they got moved from the 20 to the 10, and then that was the next play.
Okay, we're going to take these next two. We're going to wrap them into one package so to save us some time so we can get to the after party. Best player and worst player for the season. It could be anyone. Offense, defense, doesn't matter. Dave, we'll start with you.
I'll take the obvious best player. Should be defensive player of the year, TJ Watt. He just did so much for everything. I really liked what he did this season. Just great all around defensive player. And worst player, I will take the other obvious one that was someone's high point of the season of when we cut Dante Moncrief. I mean, when was it Rudolph's first pass? I don't know if it was his very first pass, but that went right through his hands for a first down for an interception and stuff like that. And there was so much hype with him coming in that he was going to be your number two behind Juju. And he was a different kind of number two, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. What about you, Bryan?
So I'm actually going to take the cop out, but I really think Chris Boswell had a magical year.
Oh, yes.
And so I'm actually, I mean, there's other guys that you could definitely go with, but I want to say best player week in and week out. You knew he was money this year. You never worried, especially after a couple games. You never worried if he lined up for a 57 and he didn't, but if he did, you're like, yeah, Boz has got this. He was just back on track. I'm going to surprise some players with my worst player. I'm going to say Marquise Pouncey.
I knew that's what you're going to say.
And I love Marquise Pouncey. He's one of my current favorite players, but he just had a rough year. And he's the anchor of an offensive line that had a rough year.
Is it safe to say with that, Bryan, that if it wasn't for how good that he's been in his career is what set him up to be disappointed with how he played this year?
Yeah, it's safe to say that. It's that's also the reason he was named to the Pro Bowl this year. Because of Lifetime Achievement Award.
Yes.
Okay. I was going to go with Minkah Fitzpatrick, obviously, for best player. He just transformed that entire defense. Worst player, you guys kind of took some of mine that I was going to use. I'm tempted to put James Conner and Juju Smith-Schuster as worst players because I look at worst players. I think of what are the expectations for you? Yeah, you could say Ryan Switzer, but did people really have high expectations for Ryan Switzer? I didn't, but everyone did for Juju and James Conner, and they didn't live up to that. So there you go. We relived 2019 as best as we could. I hope you all enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed the show. If you're someone that has never checked out the after party, stick with us. In about 5 minutes, we'll be right back here live on YouTube, a separate show. You'll get a separate notification, and we'll be talking about some Steelers stuff and some not Steelers stuff. Otherwise, Dave is on the Steelers burning question this week, right, Dave?
Yes, I was planning on doing that as long as we're still doing the Steelers burning question. It is my turn.
That's right. Yep. And Lance will be on tomorrow for Yeah, I Said It, so check him out. We will hopefully see you in a few minutes in the after party. See you.